When I think of the oil and gas business, I don't think of lazy people. I typically think of hard workers, people that are willing to roll up their sleeves and get the job done, whether that's out on location or figuring out problems in the office. So when we're going through our core belief series here at H&J and we're talking about work as a gift this week, I'm kind of at a loss. I think I'm kind of preaching to the choir, so to speak. There's not really anything, I believe that we all agree on work being a gift. So for me, I feel like the most important thing to talk about is why it's a gift. Work is a gift because God gives it to us. I talked to Matt Hood about this in my interview with him. And I also, we've heard from John Poe and from Zach Hernandez about how work is a gift and that it comes from God and that it was there not as a punishment. My name is Jonathan Dingler. I'm the marketing manager here at H&J Petroleum. And I'm excited to talk to you about why work is a gift. And for that, I'm going to be reading Colossians 3:22 through 25. So let's take a look. Slaves, in all things obey those who are your masters on earth, not with external service as those who merely please men, but with sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. Whatever you do, do your work heartily, as for the Lord rather than for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance. It is the Lord Jesus Christ whom you serve. For he who does wrong will receive the consequences of the wrong which he has done, and that without partiality. So one of the things that I find so interesting about Jesus and about the gospel and what's so great about God is that he knows what's on our heart and he knows what's on our mind. He knows all things. And so if we're working just to get by, God knows that. So that's why Paul says to work with a sincerity of heart. It means to not work and just look like you're busy for your boss. It's not to be lazy for most of the day and then get some stuff done at the end of the day and think that you've done a good job. It's about working hard and to really put 110%. Like I said, preaching to the choir here. But I think what's important is that Paul says to do our work as if unto the Lord. And I think that's what's really interesting. Sometimes we get stuck in our office, out on location, and maybe you're working for your boss, so he gets off your back. Maybe you're working for your supervisor. Sometimes you're just working for yourself. At the end of the day, Paul and effectively God is telling us, don't do it for that reason. Do it for me. And that's really hard to wrap our heads around. We're so stuck in this physical world with our physical bodies. And when you're doing work, when you're looking at a computer screen, when you're doing stuff outside, when you're on location, it's hard to imagine that God is watching and that he's paying attention and he's looking at the state of your heart. So how do we practice this? How do we always remember that God is present? A way to always remember that God is there and that you're working for him and not for others is just to practice God's presence. Practice recognizing his presence throughout the day. And so for me, sometimes what I do, because I work in an office, it's easy for me to look at the chair across from me, the empty chair across from me, and say, you know what, that's Jesus's chair. And as long as nobody's in here, Jesus is right there. Or maybe you have a chair in your office that nobody sits in, and that's just where Jesus sits. But there's a lot of other ways to do that. Maybe you have a spare hard hat. Maybe you have a spare FR that you keep in the doghouse or you keep in your truck. Just somewhere that you're always going to see it and remember that, oh yeah, Jesus is here. That's Jesus's FR. That's Jesus's hard hat. He's out on location with me. Stuff like that, I really think that gives you that perspective because we're so limited by our physical bodies that if you're alone in a car or you're alone in an office, it's easy to think that you're alone. And it's easy to forget that you're doing work for God and not for people. So that's all I got for Colossians 3:23 and work as a gift. If you're unfamiliar, we're H&J Petroleum. We have been doing some videos here on our YouTube channel covering the core beliefs of our company and how those are really founded on biblical principles. And so if you're at the end here and you're interested in learning more, go ahead and check out my previous conversation with Zach Hernandez. And I also have a pretty great conversation with Matt Hood about how all of these core beliefs came about. And so please check that out. I think it's going to be really helpful and encouraging to you. If you're an oil and gas company with consulting needs, click the link in our description. We have a 5-step rigorous hiring process for our consultants. And so any consultants that you get from us are going to be top of the line in terms of character, in terms of work ethic, and of course, experience. And if you're a consultant and you want to put yourself through the ringer of our 5-step hiring process, we got a link for you to down in the description of this video. In our next video, we're going to be taking a look at sacred rest with John Poe.